The Danish gambit begins with the moves to e4, pawn to e5, pawn to d4, black takes on d4, then pawn to c3, and if your opponent accepts, you continue with bishop to c4. You still do not care about the pawns. After pawn takes on b2, you calmly play bishop takes on b2. Yes, you have sacrificed 2 pawns, but now you have 2 powerful bishops aiming directly at your opponent's position along the long diagonals. You also have plenty of space to maneuver your pieces. For example, you can easily bring your queen to b3 or d5, putting immediate pressure on the diagonal toward f7, a critical weakness in black's camp. It's not easy for black to continue developing comfortably. Your light-squared bishop is already putting pressure on f7, which ties down black's kingside bishop and prevents it from moving freely, since doing so would allow you to capture the pawn on g7, trapping the rook on h8. In the Danish gambit, if your opponent tries to avoid complications and plays knight to f6, it usually backfires. You can easily challenge their setup with pawn to e5, gaining space and activity. Their pieces become awkward. If they retreat, they lose time, and if they stay passive, you take over the center. Your queen controls key squares, restricting the opponent's knight, which often forces it into a bad move like knight to e4. But this runs straight into a classic Danish gambit tactic, the bishop sacrifice on f7. You play bishop takes f7, and after king takes f7, you strike with queen to d5, a powerful double attack on the king and the knight. This simple but deadly combo wins back your material with a better position. And remember, even though your opponent's king may look safe for now, it's stuck in the center forever. It can't castle anymore, while you smoothly complete your development and prepare a winning attack. In this position, you can break open the center with pawn to e6, completely exposing the enemy king. It's practically a winning position for white. Maybe with perfect defense, black could survive, but in a real game, white's attack is simply overwhelming. However, the most exciting variation appears in the main line of the Danish gambit. Here, your opponent tries to develop quickly and aims to castle by playing bishop to b4, checking your king. In this situation, the best move is to block with the knight from d2, not c3, because you want to keep the diagonal open for your active bishop. After knight d2, the pawn on g7 becomes a tasty target, so black usually responds with knight f6, planning to castle and also attacking your pinned knight on d2. But remember one of the key Danish gambit ideas. Whenever your opponent plays knight f6, you can strike immediately with pawn to a5, kicking the knight and opening lines for attack. Black might feel confident and play knight to a4, attacking your pinned knight twice, thinking he's in control and about to castle with a solid 2-pawn advantage. But that's exactly when the real fireworks begin. In this position, if your opponent knew what was coming, he'd probably just resign and never look back. But of course, he doesn't. He thinks everything is under control. That's when you strike with the classic bishop takes f7, a trademark sacrifice in the Danish gambit. After king takes f7, you follow up with queen to b3, a powerful move that double attacks the king and the bishop. Your plan is simple. Win back the bishop on the next move while keeping the black king exposed in the center. Black's best defensive try is pawn to d5. They're trying to block your attack and stabilize the position. At first glance, it looks like your queen will just capture the bishop, which seems logical, but not this time. Instead, you unleash a brilliant intermediate move. A pawn takes d6. Many players don't even realize this capture is legal. It's known as an en passant capture. It's a discovered check from your bishop, hitting the king once again. Now black is forced to respond to the check, and their usual defense is bishop to a6, blocking the attack and hitting your queen. But by then, the damage is already done. The position is wide open, the black king is exposed, and your attack keeps rolling. After you capture on b4, the game seems to be stabilizing. But in reality, the tension is just beginning to build. The knight on e4 is under attack twice, and your opponent, trying to simplify, exchanges pieces on d2. At this point, he's absolutely certain that you'll recapture with queen takes d2, restoring material balance and ending the attack. But once again, you show the true power of the Danish gambit. Instead of retreating or defending, you seize the initiative with the brilliant queen to f4. It's not just a check, it's a move that completely shifts the momentum of the game. Your bishop keeps control of the long diagonal, meaning black can't interpose with the queen, and so he's forced to slide the king away to g8. Now, your opponent still feels relatively safe. The king has moved out of danger, and he's planning to tidy things up and finally capture your advanced knight. But then comes the real shock. You don't care about the knight at all. Instead, you strike with the incredible pawn takes c7, using your humble pawn as a weapon. That pawn now delivers a devastating fork, attacking both the queen and the knight, while being perfectly protected by your queen on f4. Suddenly, black realizes that every move he made led him straight into this trap. Desperate to hold his position together, he plays queen to e8, trying to defend both the knight and the critical e-file. But it's too late. The black position is crumbling, the king is stuck, and white's attack is only getting stronger. What began as a simple pawn sacrifice in the opening has now transformed into a full-blown tactical masterpiece. At this stage, your opponent feels absolutely certain that you'll capture one of the knights, either the one on d2 or the one on b8. From his perspective, that's the only logical continuation. But once again, you defy expectations. You don't take either knight. Instead, you play the astonishing queen to a5, a move that looks almost divine. This creates a deadly battery along the diagonal, instantly threatening queen takes g7 hash. It's the kind of move that feels less like human calculation and more like pure instinct, something even grandmasters might overlook. Your queen stands boldly in the center of the board, commanding the entire position while the rest of black's army sits helpless and undeveloped. It's an incredible display of harmony and precision. White's coordination is perfect, while black's pieces are trapped in chaos. Black scrambles to defend, playing queen to f7, covering the g7 square and trying to guard the bishop as well. But that defense comes at a price. The knight on b8 is suddenly left hanging, and now you finish the job in style. You capture on b8, not only winning the knight but also promoting your pawn to a new queen. The same pawn that started its journey on e2, marched to e5, captured en passant on d6, advanced to c7, and now crowns itself on b8. A full journey from humble beginnings to glorious triumph. It's poetic, really. A pawn that fought its way through the entire battlefield to deliver victory. The Danish Gambit doesn't just give you an attack, it gives you a masterpiece on the board. Finally, you capture on b8, promoting your pawn into a brand new queen. And what a promotion it is. It's not just symbolic, it comes with a check to the black king and completely wrecks black's position. The board is in ruins. Black has no choice but to trade queens. After queen takes c5+, the king is forced to cover, and in a practical game, the simplest and most effective continuation is to recapture on d2, cleaning up the board. You emerge from the chaos up a rook and a knight, a completely winning endgame where your opponent has no realistic counterplay. But for the sake of beauty, let's look at what the computer suggests. A continuation that's almost artistic. Instead of immediately simplifying, the engine finds another elegant idea. Queen to e5 once again. It's a move that maintains pressure, keeps every piece active, and continues to suffocate black's position rather than rushing to capture material. In response, black tries queen to f7, desperately holding things together. Rather than grabbing the knight, you play a quiet but deadly move. You exchange knights, slightly weakening your pawn structure but opening the g-file, and that's exactly what you want. The plan is crystal clear now. Rook to g1, and the moment the file opens, rook takes g7 becomes unstoppable. Black's only hope is to defend with h6 and then rook h7, a clumsy attempt to cover the g7 pawn. And now, with perfect timing, you castle. A move that looks calm but carries a deadly hidden purpose. Suddenly, rook to d8 hash becomes a checkmate threat, and black has no defense left. From a daring pawn sacrifice at move 2 to a full-scale attack ending in a forced mate, this is the Danish Gambit at its finest. Bold, creative, and breathtakingly beautiful.